Hi! So I thought I would do a video today about my perspectives on education because I got a question on my last video just to do with that. Before I read that question, I just wanted to apologize for my voice because I'm recovering from being sick, which, speaking of the devil, is from being in the school system. Anyway, let me read you the comment from that video. So it's from Quentin Quadgrass. I hope I'm reading that correctly. Quentin says, "Nice video. It would be cool to hear about your perspective on education. It's such an interesting topic. Everyone seems to have a different idea of what education is and what people should be learning about." And that's basically the question. Thanks, Quentin, for your question. I hope I can answer it to an okay extent because it's a huge, broad question, really, and you could take a long time just to talk about just that one thing. I thought maybe I'd first talk about this paper I had to do just this past semester because I think it might have a little bit to do with this question. So this paper was on our so-called philosophy of education, which we had to take some chapters from the GUTEC textbook, which is that textbook I mentioned in my previous video, the one that I really, liked. We were to take different philosophies, something that had to do with education, and we were supposed to talk about which ones we thought informed the way we wanted to teach and why. So it was on idealism, realism, and conservatism, and I specifically said that I chose idealism and realism because of my conservative standpoints towards education. So let me explain a little bit about what I mean by idealism, realism, and conservatism. So idealism specifically Plato's ideas of the forms that when children and even adults are being educated, it is specifically because there are truths, higher truths that we are trying to strive towards to understand. There's always something more that we are searching for to understand, and that education should be specifically this, that not because, oh, you have to learn this because you want to get a job, but which is obviously important, which will come in the next step, realism, but specifically because you should want to learn, because there are so many amazing things that you can come to understand and to learn about, and that we as teachers, as educators, our job is to bring kids along on this journey that they too will want to learn. I really like Mortimer Adler's book that he talks about how we as educators should kind of be like Socrates, that we're not telling kids what all these facts that they need to know, but we are guiding them on this journey of coming to knowledge, that they themselves, obviously we need to be giving some direct instruction first of all, some things that they need to know, but that a majority should be spent on the kids themselves going on this journey of learning things, and we help guide them. So maybe that will be through being given research questions, and kids will have to choose a certain topic of something that interests them, or it can be just even a topic that the teacher gives, but the kids themselves are going along this path to knowing, that they themselves do the thinking. We can obviously help them. That's what we're there to do, is to help them learn about these things and when they get stuck, but we shouldn't be telling them all these things because otherwise this knowledge isn't theirs, it's ours, and the knowledge needs to be theirs. Otherwise it's just going to be memorizing a whole long of useless facts. Not useless, but it is useless in the way that they're going to forget it very soon. They're not going to remember these things. But by making knowledge their own, knowledge that they own, they'll remember this stuff because it's something that they discovered themselves. Realism. The fact that there's things like the scientific method through Aristotle, that was kind of mentioned in that chapter, but the fact that not everything is this place where everything is sunshine and butterflies, which is when I brought in conservatism, because in our chapter on liberalism, it talked about how it's very, very idealistic. While conservatives take a step back, say, we're not all that great people, we're not amazing people, we make mistakes, we need to keep that in the back of our minds, and really that life can be tough, and the fact that, yes, we do have to have an education to have jobs, but I think I'm probably more of an idealist in the way that I want. Obviously, I'm going to be teaching kids the curriculum, but I want to have as much as possible of that effect of having the guidance to knowledge, and kids being able to choose research topics, and me being able to choose research topics that aren't just in the curriculum, because looking at the curriculum, the Alberta curriculum for where I am, I honestly think that there is a lot that's lacking in it. There really is. For example, LA, language arts. The curriculum, it's very, very general, which is nice in the way that you can pretty much pick what you think is important because it's not really explicitly stated what the government wants you to teach. So I like that part, but there are a lot of teachers who will take that as an opportunity to be lazy. For example, it never mentions, or it barely mentions, I shouldn't say never, it hardly mentions anything to do with grammar. And because of that, teachers will just teach the bare minimum that is mentioned, saying, oh, kids need to know about past and present and future tense. So, well, the curriculum says that, so we'll only teach that, and then the rest of grammar doesn't count because the curriculum doesn't say so. However, I, as an educator, want to make sure that my students have a firm basis in grammar and spelling like I did, because I see the kids that I tutor now, the kids that I've read their essays, whether they're at a young age or a much older age, I see how they can't spell, and they don't know how to write sentences at all because they don't know grammar. And yeah, grammar isn't maybe the most fun thing in the world to learn, but it's important. And I think it's my job as an educator to try to make it as enjoyable as possible, but to teach it. Conservatism. I'll mention it a little bit in the dichotomy between idealism and realism, but there's also more in the fact of the importance of, for example, history. That we need to know about our roots and our past, because otherwise, how are we supposed to move on to the future if we're holding on to nothing, if we don't know what our values are, we don't know what our ancestors went through. So those are kind of the major things that I kind of talked about in that paper that I did. Is there anything really else? Those are kind of, I think, my perspectives on education, really. The fact that I think it's important to have these, I guess, traditional ideas of education, I guess. Can we really call it traditionalism? I'm not sure, because I notice how in education there are these waves of that we have this way of doing things. Let's try this new fundy, fashionable way of doing this. And then we realize it doesn't work out. We return back to that way. There'll be another wave of, well, let's try this kind of thing. And it keeps going back to these traditional ways. For example, with reading. The traditional way is to learn through phonics. That this is a way that kids learn really well. Then in, I think it was the 70s, this is the whole language approach. Came out, sounds really, really cool. Oh, well, you know what? We're not going to waste all this time on kids learning all the letters and the sounds. We'll just put them right into reading, because this will give them real environments for learning. And they'll start to learn the way letters sound just by learning the whole word first. it didn't really work out so well, and parents started complaining, my kid can't read. And now recently we've been returning back to phonics. There's some mixed approach that kind of has the two together, but generally it seems agreed that phonics is more the way to go. Yes, we should have these real life examples of making sure the kids are actually reading books. Duh, that's important. But the whole language approach doesn't really work. That's just one example. There's also been studies. I can't remember the guy. John Hattie did this meta-analytical study where he took, which is basically where you take a ton of studies, so you don't have just one study, but you're looking at a multiple of studies, so you have a huge sample size. So you know that you're really getting the results. And he looked at a ton of different things in education. Whole language and phonics were one of the things that he looked at. So the thing about this study was that if you had something with an effect size below 0.4, that meant that it was harmful, that it not only did not help a child, but it was detrimental to their learning. If it was above 0.4, then it was beneficial for learning. Whole language approach, I think it was in the negative. So it wasn't even just below 0.4, it was negative something or other. I don't have the stats right in front of me right now. But yeah, it was detrimental to education, John Hattie found. While phonics, on the other hand, I don't remember how high up it was, but it was up there, definitely. So it was found beneficial for learning. It was interesting because not everything that was considered a more traditional approach, but a lot of the things that were in that would be, I guess, considered in that category were seen as beneficial, while a lot of the really trendy things that lasted for a little bit and then kind of went to the wayside were actually found to be harmful, which was pretty interesting because there was me coming from this very traditional perspective, and these stats coming in that, lo and behold, it actually made sense. The things I could say that maybe changed a little bit in my perspectives from when I first started my education degree until now were the kind of things that I was talking about in the little section where I talked about idealism with Mortimer Adler's book. So I came into my degree thinking that direct instruction was the way to go. Kids sit in their desk, you give them all the information, that's the thing that works. John Hattie's study also showed that direct instruction is really good. I had a lot of people in my class, still do, who were all for the constructivist approach, which by itself is shown to be harmful. So the constructive approach is basically, rather than giving any information, kids they're kind of given a problem, and then they're put to work. They have no outside information whatsoever. This is in the purest sense of the constructivist form. They're basically put to work and they find out answers for themselves. No direct instruction whatsoever in the purest form of constructivism. It is shown to be not beneficial, definitely not beneficial in the purest sense. There has been many studies on this, not just John Hattie's study. So when I heard about constructivism, I thought, see, that just shows that these project-based learning is just ridiculous. However, I got to Mortimer Adler's book, and he came from a very traditional standpoint, so I thought, yeah, this guy knows his stuff. Yeah, and he's definitely going to agree with me on pretty much everything I believe in, right? Wrong. He brings in the example of Socrates, which I kind of mentioned a little bit before, and how he led his students to knowledge. Kind of in not so much a project-based way, but in an inquiry way. And that and he said it was very beneficial to have just a little bit of direct instruction. And then the kids go out to onto this path of knowledge with the teacher as a guide and a mentor rather than just telling you what to do. And because of that, the knowledge is learned better because you're not just being given a whole bunch of facts. He also talks about how he doesn't think textbooks should be relied on. He didn't think that they should be really used at all because it's just a memorization of facts. I think probably textbooks could be used a little bit, but definitely not in the way that you're going to be memorizing all the facts. You need to come through this through hands-on learning, and also just through coming to knowledge yourself. So I think my ideas kind of now is, yes, direct instruction, but then we need to come and use that direct instruction in assignments, projects, that type of thing.